And so everybody I work with was very close to Frank. And there's not a day that goes.
Mike Wolfe's sentencing left audiences across the country in disbelief as the American Pickers star was taken away in handcuffs. Most people assumed his arrest had something to do with an antique-related dispute or a business disagreement with the History Channel. However, breaking news reports revealed that Wolfe had been arrested because Frank Fritz's death was no longer considered natural. Authorities now believe it was a premeditated murder. Medical examiners found lethal amounts of medication in Fritz's body, pointing to a deliberate overdose. Prosecutors charged Wolfe with murder, stating it was intentional rather than accidental. The idea that someone would drug a former partner who trusted them so deeply shocked many, with some even describing it as outright evil. Although viewers thought the tension between Wolfe and Fritz was only for TV, prosecutors painted a much darker picture, a revenge-driven crime rooted in jealousy and greed. As the investigation progressed, social media reports revealed that Wolfe's charges had initially been downgraded while more evidence was gathered. One account claimed that a crew member from American Pickers placed Wolfe at Fritz's home around the time of his death. The Iowa State Police took a deeper look and reportedly uncovered compelling evidence, including Wolfe's fingerprints on medication containers and alarming text messages to Fritz, prompting them to pursue first-degree murder charges. The inquiry into Fritz's death began when the medical examiner noticed irregularities in the toxicology report. While his passing had originally been blamed on complications from a stroke, the autopsy told a different story. Dangerous levels of prescription medication, well beyond the recommended dose, were discovered. This raised immediate concern, especially given that Fritz had been strictly following his prescribed treatment during recovery. Investigators began quietly looking into who had access to him in his final hours, and what they found stunned even seasoned detectives. Security footage captured Wolfe's car pulling up to Fritz's residence late at night, about 3 hours before emergency services were contacted. That same night, Wolfe himself called 911, claiming he had dropped by to check on Fritz and found him unconscious. Paramedics arrived to find Fritz without a pulse, and efforts to revive him failed. He was pronounced dead at the scene. While initial reports blamed the stroke, toxicology results indicated otherwise. Investigators became more suspicious due to Wolfe's actions in the immediate aftermath. Rather than grieving, he moved swiftly to take control of Fritz's assets, including his antique collection and intellectual property. Within 2 days, Wolfe had already reached out to Fritz's attorneys in an attempt to gain the rights to his name and likeness for future American Pickers merchandise. Production staff later testified that Wolfe also made quick moves to access Fritz's private storage units filled with valuable, never-aired items. Crew members noted that Wolfe seemed highly focused and oddly unaffected by the loss, particularly when discussing business matters so soon after Fritz's death. A search of Wolfe's home and office turned up a hidden safe containing several unmarked prescription bottles. These were later confirmed to hold the same drugs found in Fritz's system. Even more damning was the discovery of a personal journal in Wolfe's travel bag, which revealed his deepening resentment toward Fritz. The journal included entries going back years, with some showing increasingly bitter feelings. In a particularly telling entry written just weeks before Fritz died, Wolfe wrote, "F thinks he can come back and take half the spotlight again. He forgets that without me there would be no show. He's become a liability. The network is showing me there's only one way to save what I've built." During the 6-week trial, Wolfe remained eerily composed as he sat beside his attorneys, while prosecutors outlined a chilling plan of calculated murder. Jurors heard how Wolfe had researched how to use undetectable poisons and how to stage a death to look like a natural occurrence. His internet history included searches such as "Can stroke medication interactions be detected after death?" and "How to make someone's death look like stroke." The prosecution claimed that Wolfe exploited Fritz's previous health problems, using them as a convenient cover for murder. Former American Pickers crew members testified to unsettling shifts in the relationship between Wolfe and Fritz in the years leading up to Fritz's departure from the show and his later death. One production assistant recounted overhearing intense arguments about the show's direction, with Wolfe insisting on total creative control. He allegedly told Frank he no longer deserved equal billing due to his health issues. Multiple witnesses described Wolfe as increasingly domineering, often speaking negatively about Fritz to network executives and cutting him off from old friends in the antiques community. Among the most powerful testimony came from Danielle Colby, who appeared for the prosecution despite her clear discomfort. Through tears, she shared a confrontation she had with Wolfe about how he was treating Fritz. "I saw Mike become obsessed with being the sole face of American Pickers," she said. "When I brought up reconciling with Frank, he got defensive and furious, telling me to stay out of what didn't concern me." Colby also recalled finding unsettling notes in Wolfe's office that tracked Fritz's medication schedule. When questioned, Wolfe claimed he was just worried about Frank's health. The defense attempted to frame the situation as a misunderstood friendship, arguing that Wolfe had made sincere efforts to mend things with Fritz before his passing. They brought in network executives who described Wolfe's public support for Fritz's recovery. However, this narrative was significantly undercut by the testimony of Fritz's doctor, who stated that while Fritz had health concerns, he was optimistic about his future and planning to start his own antique business. The doctor also confirmed he had never prescribed the high doses of medication found in Fritz's system. Under cross-examination, Wolfe's calm demeanor began to unravel. When directly asked whether he had administered the medication to Fritz, he lashed out at the prosecutor, saying, "You have no idea what it's like to build something from nothing and then watch someone else take the credit, to smile for the cameras while everyone thinks he's just as vital to the show's success." His outburst prompted his legal team to request a recess, but the damage had been done. Jurors later said this moment was a turning point, revealing the deep resentment Wolfe still harbored long after Fritz had left the show. The prosecution's case was further strengthened by financial evidence. Forensic accountants revealed that in the months leading up to Fritz's death, Wolfe had begun secretly restructuring his businesses to gain control of Fritz's intellectual property in the event of his incapacity or death. He had also taken out a $5 million business insurance policy on Fritz, naming his company as the beneficiary. Additionally, prosecutors showed that Wolfe had created several shell companies Fritz didn't know about and had been transferring valuable antiques, worth over $2 million, into these entities. It took the jury only 4 hours to deliver a guilty verdict. But when the judge handed down a life sentence without parole, the courtroom erupted. Wolfe, who had appeared calm throughout the trial, suddenly stood up and screamed, "You don't understand. He was going to ruin everything. He was going to destroy my legacy." He lunged over the defense table, knocking over water bottles and papers. As bailiffs moved in, he charged toward Fritz's family, swinging wildly before they managed to restrain him. Panic swept through the courtroom. As people scrambled toward the exits, Wolfe broke free again, grabbed an antique walking stick entered into evidence, and used it to strike one of the bailiffs in the shoulder. "I built American Pickers. It was my life's work," he shouted as 3 more officers wrestled him to the floor. The judge was quickly evacuated while Wolfe continued to resist, thrashing, kicking, and yelling about betrayal as officers struggled to contain him. Fritz's sister, who had been in the courtroom, was quickly escorted out by security when Wolfe made another attempt to reach her. "I deserved," he shouted before being silenced. "It was my show," he shouted as officers finally managed to restrain and handcuff him. The most stunning moment occurred when Wolfe locked eyes with Danielle Colby, who was seated in the gallery, and yelled, "Tell them the truth. Tell them what Frank was really like." Colby turned away, visibly upset, while other crew members broke down in tears. The trial has deeply fractured the American Pickers family. Some backed Wolfe, while others testified against him. According to court documents, Wolfe had spent years sowing discord among the crew, turning them against Fritz and causing rifts within the team that may never fully heal. Despite efforts to subdue him, Wolfe kept shouting, revealing even more disturbing claims. He was going to start his own show, he screamed. He told me I was obsolete, that the network wanted him back. Reporters described the courtroom scene as surreal, noting that at least 3 people were injured during the chaos, including Wolfe's own defense attorney who was hit by a flying water pitcher. Even as he was dragged out, Wolfe kept yelling about betrayal and how Fritz had supposedly planned to ruin him. Legal analysts later stated that Wolfe's violent meltdown likely destroyed any possibility of an appeal. His behavior clashed directly with his defense's claim that he was merely a misunderstood entrepreneur, not prone to violence. In the aftermath, several of Wolfe's former friends and colleagues came forward, offering new insight into his true character. Thomas Reynolds, a former producer of American Pickers, shared stories of Wolfe's temper behind the scenes. He had this friendly, down-to-earth image on camera, Reynolds said. But off camera, he could be frightening, especially toward junior staff. His whole personality would shift once the cameras stopped rolling. Others noted that Wolfe had grown increasingly paranoid over the years, convinced that Fritz was planning a rival show. The entire case has sent shockwaves through the reality TV world. Once a global hit, American Pickers now faces an uncertain future. The History Channel has pulled all episodes featuring Wolfe and issued a statement offering condolences to Fritz's family. Major sponsors have since withdrawn support, casting further doubt on the show's survival. Fritz's family is pursuing control of his antique collection and intellectual property. They've vowed to preserve his legacy and are considering legal action against the network, accusing it of enabling Wolfe's escalating behavior. Mental health professionals analyzing the case suggest Wolfe may have had narcissistic personality disorder, worsened by his fame. Dr. Robert Keller, a forensic psychologist who followed the trial, noted, "This doesn't excuse what he did, but it offers some explanation. People with narcissistic traits often present as charming in public while hiding deep resentment. Losing Fritz from the show may have been a psychological blow he never recovered from." What shocked many most was how Wolfe used his celebrity status to control public perception. After Fritz's death, he went on social media, crying and blaming it on stroke complications, only to use that moment to promote commemorative merchandise in Fritz's name. "This wasn't just murder," said prosecutor Sarah Donovan during her closing remarks. "This was a calculated manipulation of millions of loyal viewers, grieving fans who never knew they were mourning with the man who caused that loss." Investigators discovered that over $1 million had been raised in Fritz's name following his death, most of which was funneled into accounts accessible only by Wolfe. Now beginning his life sentence, Wolfe leaves behind a disillusioned fanbase trying to come to terms with who he really was. Viewers who once welcomed him into their homes each week now feel deceived. "We believed in his charm and love for antiques," said longtime fan Robert Jenkins. "Finding out it was all an act, it's heartbreaking." Former TV colleagues have publicly distanced themselves, releasing statements of shock and urging respect for Fritz's memory. A show once celebrated for its commitment to preserving the past is now overshadowed by tragedy, betrayal, and the unsettling truth behind a once beloved personality.